Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to the first in a 3-video series where we're going to go from basic files, videos that are sent to us, and we're going to turn them into this. Now, you'll need these resources, so included below is a link to a zip folder on a Dropbox that has all of those files in it, and we're going to make it. So the programs that I'm going to use is some kind of audio editor. I'll be using Ableton. You can use any. For me, this is where I make my click tracks, where I do my audio work. And then I'll be using Premiere Pro for the video work. So there are some free options out there. Reaper is a great one for audio. That's sort of a trial one. But really any audio editor that allows you to use different plugins to warp and alter sounds, that's important because we are going to cover in audio. I'm going to go over not only syncing, but warping. And I'll show you the kinds of things that I use on tracks, mainly just EQ and compression, and a few tricks. I won't go into detail on those. I know there's a lot of great resources there, so I'm going to show you how they work in a flow. For video, DaVinci's Resolve is a great free option that even though I'm using Premiere, all of the features are in DaVinci for what we're doing, so you can follow along that way. And there's a lot of great resources out there. If you have Premiere, awesome. Or maybe you want to grab a trial. They offer them. So that's that, and we're going to jump in. So everything you're looking at now is what appears in that folder. There's the 5 videos, and there's the reference track. So the first thing to do, now that we've gotten this, is we need to actually make it so we can work with the wave separately from the video, right? Work with the audio separate from the video. The program that I use to do this is one by Adobe. It is actually called Adobe Prelude. And I'll walk you through this right now, what it looks like when I do it. If this isn't a program you use or you have access to, you would be able to find an example of it. And really, it's any file that allows you to save the audio separately from the video. That could even just be in your sequencer. It could be in any number of things. You could use Handbrake, a tool we'll talk about later. So now that I have this open, what we do is I have a whole video on how Prelude works. So I'm going to do this in super speed, basically, to get that done. And if you are working along in this, we just find our folder, we check everything, and then we want to give it a destination folder. What I'll end up doing here is we're actually going to just put it in the exact same folder, and we're going to call it audio. Right? It should be something that makes sense, something that so we know where we find it. One thing that's really important from the onset is your file management and your file systems. So we've got our folder. We're going to transcode it to WAV. And then all I do at this point here, with everything selected, there we go. I don't need to select the audio. With the videos selected, is I can just click ingest. It's going to launch Media Encoder for me in the background, and it's going to separate the files and basically just create a copy of them that is just the audio. So I'm going to go forward in time until that's done. All right, so it's now done, and I can see in my audio file, there's the subfolder it made with the date and all my horn tracks. So this is the point where I want to talk about managing the project, because this is going to be something important. So a lot of editors work where you can actually just drag in a folder and it'll bring that folder with it. Like Premiere works that way, and it's great. So what I want to do in my folder I've made is we're also going to make a video one. And in there, we're going to move all of the videos. And I'm also going to make myself an asset folder. Asset's going to be where the reference track goes, where any other media, maybe it's photos, maybe it's a logo, some kind of title screen that's provided to you. And it'll be where we end up putting our renders when we're done. Because we want to be able, at a glance, find any file. And it may feel small in a 5-file project, but in a big project, and I've said this in other videos where I go way more into detail about this, it's so important to know where things are. The only final thing from here, so we've downloaded the files, like you've recorded them, separated the audio. I've used Prelude. You could use any other formats, and I'll put a couple in the links down below that there are some free services that can do it if you don't have anything. And we've organized it. So this is pretty quick, but it covers a lot. So I want to spend a few minutes actually talking about the reference track. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring up my Ableton session where I built that track. Okay, earphones on. What we're looking at right now is just the MIDI of my click track. I didn't build anything up. But one thing that's in here is important is actually the kit. So I don't use a click in this one. And let's just listen, you can hear why. Right, so there's enough happening that I didn't feel like I needed to have a click track where I could just use the pulse of the kit to keep time. So that's one option. Since I recorded this myself, I didn't set up a click track in a traditional way I usually would, but I just wanted to show you quickly what I did in here. So this is just the MIDI information from, I use MuseScore, and I just wrote it in, and then I pulled the parts in, assigned them instruments, and you're thinking, well, you record them all in horn. So I used a pitch shift device for the MIDI to put it into the right key so I could play all the parts. And then I was off and running with it. And then what I would do is I would leave the kit on, and I would record one horn part at a time, and then muting the track I recorded to. So this is a way I do it when I'm recording myself. Now, if you're doing a project with other people, we need to take this click track a step further. So let's actually jump into Adobe Audition, and I'll show you there. I could do it in Ableton, but since a lot of people are going to use a lot of different programs, I'm going to try to show you a lot of different programs and ways we can do this. So let's head over to Audition to talk about setting up your click track to be successful. All right, so we're now here in Adobe Audition, and we're going to put in the reference track. So what I'm actually just do is just drop it, and I'm going to actually create a multi-track session out of it. And we're just going to call it Quick Example. So after doing a lot of projects, one thing that we've learned is people will do things you never imagined. Okay. So what you can see in mine is I play a note on the second beat, right? If we actually go into our folder here and grab two of the audio files really quick, I'll show you how I did my sync. So all I did, and we can see it here if we solo these tracks. So basically what happens, there's 2-measure lead in, I played on the downbeat, so. Right, and we could go and sync these, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We're actually talking about this reference track. So we can remember it sounds like this. All right, so what we actually want to do to make this successful for students or people we're working with is make it almost invaluable. And how we're going to do that is by recording a cue line. And so I'm going to show you something that I like to do that I've gotten from colleagues. So here's what that cue track would look like. Today we're going to be recording the YouTube tutorial horn part examples. I'm going to count to 3 and we're going to clap together. 1, 2, 3. All right. So that's sort of step 1. And the reason we've done that is I wanted a sync point that's really good and obvious that people won't forget to do. I'm going to now trigger my third track, and we need to explain how it's going to start really quickly. And it'll go like this. You're going to hear a 2-measure drum lead in, and you begin playing on the downbeat. Have fun. So now what we actually have is something that's going to sound like this. Today we're going to be recording the YouTube tutorial horn part examples. I'm going to count to 3 and we're going to clap together. 1, 2, 3. You're going to hear a 2-measure drum lead in, and you begin playing on the downbeat. Have fun. And then they're off and running. If I was doing this for other people, I would actually probably have a click running as well. But just for my example, I didn't need one. So this is a little bit about what's been making click tracks successful. It's guaranteeing a sync point, having something to reference and tune to. Pretty simple. We do it with MIDI. And there you go. And then you'll end up at a point where you get your folder full of files that you download and start to work on. So to recap sort of where you should be right now, you should have a little understanding of the click track I used when I recorded this, a way to implement it with others, a folder with 5 horn videos in it, potentially a folder with 5 audio, or you'll soon have 5 audio versions of it. And now you're actually set up and ready to edit. And that's going to be in the next part. So please subscribe, like, you know, make sure you don't miss these as we go forward, because this is going to be, again, a 3-part series. We're at the end of it, and you've got a thing and a way to do it. As well, if you're working from your own files, everything should transfer over. It's just going to be sort of, you won't see what I see, but that's fine. All right, so see you next time for part 2. Thanks.